exhibition, arts exhibition, photo exhibition, research, as well as talks. And today we are very honored to have with us Susan Conway, who is an expert on material culture, both the Lana culture as well as Shan culture. She has written various books, as you can see on the table, on textile, but also on manuscript. And today we are going to talk about Tai Herbalism, Tai not Thailand, but Tai of the Shan group in Myanmar. So this is the main focus today. I am particularly glad to have her here because I am linked to her through her husband, late husband Gordon Conway, who was the president of the Rockefeller Foundation when I was the regional director for Southeast Asia of the Rockefeller Foundation here in Bangkok. So I am very, very happy with her. We spend some time, of course, in various trip and board meetings whenever possible. And now we meet again here for this great occasion. So Susan, without further ado, I think we can start. We are going, first she's going to talk about the book, and then we will open for question and answer and comment, and end up with the signing for those that are interested in the book. Please. Okay, we need to try for the Facebook Live whether it's clear or not. Can you please test outside and then we can. One moment of patience, because I am not sure it's okay for, may not work, but let's see. Okay, it's okay.
This is my position at the moment. I was at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London before this post, and I recently worked in Shan State. Now, those of you, many of you know my books, you know the work that I've done. And after producing a lot of books on textiles, I got really interested in textiles to do with magic. This was because nobody really had written about them, and I'd done a lot of books on weaving and all those kind of things. And these were textiles that were not woven; they were actually painted or drawn, and they seemed to have a lot of association with tattoos. And I became interested in that as another book. It was published in 2014, but it got my whole mentality going about magic and herbalism and all those kind of issues, starting with this. So the field work for this book involved going into Shan State and talking to the monks and the lay saya, the men who actually perform rituals that are associated with magic. And then I went and watched rituals. And then I went to libraries in America, the USA, and Thailand to find out what existed on magic and customs. And then the material culture. What was really interesting was the number of manuscripts there were. The people did not know what they were for. They had these images. I went to Oxford to the Ashmolean Museum, and they said, "Oh yeah, we have some textiles look like they've got ghosts on them. Can you have a look at them?" And nobody looked at them. And then I went to Washington, D.C., the same thing. Oh, yes, we have these manuscripts. We don't know what they are, these funny creatures. You can have a look at them. And so I knew that there was room for study because nobody, really done much work on it. So my field work included going in the Shan State, included visiting local Saya. And this man was particularly interesting and very helpful because not only did he perform rituals, he also made herbal medicines. Now, at the time, as you understand, I was writing a book about magic, not specifically about herbs, but I was quite interested in where he got his herbs from and how he used them and all the rest of it. And so I asked him if I could pay him so he could do a ceremony on me. So he was very quick. He said, okay, $25 US dollars. So I said, okay, I have to go back to Tongji to the bank and get some dollars and all the rest of it. Anyway, so we had this appointment, and I told him that I wanted to be blessed because I had to go on a long journey back to the border into Thailand. I had to get a plane down to Bangkok, and then I had to fly to London. So he prepared for me a special little group of what are called yan, little drawings of protective spirits and little cords of white and red cotton and some what looked like ointment. And he told me all the way back to London I had to keep it over my head. And so when I got on the airplane, I always put it in the overhead locker just to be safe. And so that's how I traveled with it. But what was interesting about this man was he's tattooed totally from on his head and everywhere except his face. And he said that he'd been tattooed over and over and over again to increase his power. Okay? So in other words, part of magic is actually tattooing, or in the tradition of the Shan State, is tattooing. And so the only areas that were not tattooed were his hands, which just had naga, and the soles of his feet. And when I asked him, why are you like this? He said, because no evil can penetrate. No evil can penetrate. I thought that was quite interesting. But I think he'd been tattooed something like 40 times by different tattoo masters. It's taken a long time for him to achieve that kind of protection. And then I also visited a lot of Saya in the villages, on the Shan side of the border, because then when I was doing this work, you could do both sides of the border. So I did the Shan on the Shan side, and then crossed into Thailand and did the Shan living in Mehalsong and that whole region in the north. And this is just one of the interviews. And this guy has a manuscript. Now, when I've been interviewing a lot of them, I hadn't realized that they own manuscripts with all these prescriptions in them. In other words, there are old manuscripts that have tattoo images, instructions on how to do magic, herbs that you could treat people with, and so on. The problem seemed to be that large numbers of them were being bought by dealers from Thailand, and they were being brought over the border into this country, taken apart and sold by in fashionable shops as sort of decoration. So, and because Shan State is quite poor, you could understand why people would sell their manuscripts. But one or two of the elderly really said they weren't going to sell them. And if nobody wanted to take over from them and become masters, they would give the manuscript to the temple. And I said, what will happen to it in the temple? And they said, well, it'll be blessed and purified, and then it'll be put in the library with the other manuscripts. So there obviously wasn't a problem about something which was to do with, magic actually being placed in the monastery. So I began to understand that there was a crossover between Buddhism and what could be described as animism, I suppose. And then I also started visiting and asking about herbal medicine. What kind of herbs do you use? What do you use them for? And so on. And then the manuscript research. This is from the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And they have a whole collection of these wonderful manuscripts with, spirits and ghosts and witches and all kinds of creatures. But nobody knew what they were. I mean, the collector, the actual guy who took care of the collection, who has since retired, but he said to me, why don't you go and find something out about them? We've had them in the collection. We don't know anything about them. They were just given. So that was sort of another thing. But what I love about them is the artistic nature of the drawings. They're quite unique. These sort of, they're human, but they're kind of created in a certain way, which gives them some kind of power, either good or bad. And in this particular case, there must be Burmese spirits because they're wearing Luntiya patterns, which obviously I would know because I've got textile. So this was some of them. And then they also have all these square diagrams with letters in and numbers and all kinds of magic. This is another a sample from the Library of Congress. Again, these extraordinary looking characters, they're just amazing. I'm just really interested in who drew them and how they drew them. Now, there's a French academic who worked on them, and she said that she thought that the Saya went into a state of trance to produce them. In other words, they got some kind of inspiration from the gods or the spirits to actually produce them. But my argument is that there had to be other influences as well, because so many of them have a reference to something in material culture, like the robes or the some form of garment or something that the spirit is dressed in. So I think it's a mixture of both. Now this book is based on this manuscript from the collection of the Horniman Museum in London. And I chose it because we have an exact date when it went into the collections, which was 1840. And so we knew from that it had been obviously produced before 1840. But we had something to actually pin all the other work on, because before that I didn't have any idea of an age kind of related to each individual manuscript, because many of them don't say when they were written. You don't know how many times they've been copied. There's no kind of help in that field. But this one, as I said, was in the store. Now I went to the Horniman and said, have you got any manuscripts from Shanstei? And they said, no, we haven't got anything like that. But what we do have is a Christian Bible. They said it's got a label on it saying it's a Bible. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I said, let me have a look at it anyway, even if it's a Bible. But in fact, it wasn't a Bible. It was this. In other words, whoever wrote the label saw it as some kind of belief system. In fact, they were saying something truthful, because in a way, it's a collection of beliefs, right? It may not be a Christian Bible, but it's a collection of another set of beliefs. So I thought that was really useful. So then I also went to the monks with a lot of copies of all these manuscripts, which I was able to get, and asked the monks if they had any idea what they were about. And they came up with various ideas. Some of them had computers, and they found images on their computers and so on. And I did several of those, including with a monk tattooist. The guy on the left is actually still, or was in 2014, 10 years ago now, still doing tattoos. And he'd been a lay tattoo artist. and then he'd become a monk. And he had a tattoo salon right at the back of the monastery, away from the main buildings. And I think that was because it was Sayasa. It was not strictly Buddhist. The abbot told me, I said, how do you allow this? And he said, it's not strictly Buddhist, but people want it. And so we accommodate him at the back of the monastery, away from the main Buddha chapels. So I thought that, again, you know, it's interesting that there's this relationship between the two. Anyway, they all had a good look at the manuscript, and some of them had information and others of them didn't. So I put the manuscript away, the book on magic was published, and I kind of semi-forgot about it, really. And then in 2016, Aung San Suu Kyi became the leader by proxy. With that, there was a lot of change in the education, and I got invited to actually go out and teach at a monastery in the hills beyond. And that lasted just for 3 years, because in 2021 she was deposed. So that relationship, unfortunately, came to an end. But when I went to the monastery, that's what I had to do. That was my contract, teaching anthropology and material conservation, encouraging MA students to do field work and not just do theoretical work, that actually go out in the field and really learn properly how people did things. Because a lot of research is basically theoretical, all done on computers, and nobody goes out and really looks, you know. And so I organized field work. And then the other thing was we got support from a foundation to start cataloging their manuscripts. And as a sideline, I took the Horniman manuscript, because I thought maybe somebody can read it. I took it with me. These are my students. The guy standing to my right was a technician, and he came out for about 2 weeks just to help set up I didn't understand how you did the World Wide Web thing. You know, I mean, I knew how to digitize manuscripts, but you have to set up the website, you have to get permission, and it was all very complicated. And so he came over from Laos to actually help for a couple of weeks. And then the rest are students. This was taken at the end of a fieldwork day, where we went to this wonderful monastery, Keku Pagoda. It's about an hour's drive from Inlele. I don't think you can go there now. Okay, so when I was teaching, I got the monks to look at the Horniman manuscript and see if they could translate it. Well, they couldn't. Nobody in the monastery could read it. But they said, we think there are some old men in the hills who might be able to help. We'll send copies of it up and, you know, see what comes back. So basically, off it went to you know, was circulated around quite remote monasteries, I think, where they thought there might be people who could read. And then I took the course, and about 2 days before I left, I was just preparing to leave because the political situation was getting a bit more difficult. And I thought, oh, well, that's it. They're not, you know, nobody's managed to translate it. And the abbot called me and asked me to go for an interview. And when I got there, he said, oh, well, here's a copy. And it was translated into Shan, Central Shan. And I thought, well, that's easy, because translating from today modern Shan into English, or loads of people in Chiang Mai could do it. So it was a huge revelation. And so that's when we started. So what does it contain? Well, it contains, the manuscript contains ingredients for making medicines, prescriptions to control evil spirits, mystical diagrams of magic spells, and then I included an index, there's a bibliography, there's translations of the Latin plants and so on, so that it could be used by people who want to find out what was available in the early 19th century, which is when this is written, okay? Now, in those days, of course, the hills were covered in jungle, forest, so that all the ingredients could be gathered from the wild or grown in local herb gardens. But it also includes, of course, which today will horrify everybody, animal parts. So this is a recipe for pills, and it's the one with the most ingredients of all the ones that I've got. And you can see what's in it. I think it's really interesting. They're all ground together and mixed with bear bile and porcupine preserve, rhino blood. You know, all those animals that were there in the forest that are no longer there. And although this looks horrific to us, don't forget animals would have been plentiful then. We can't judge this by up today, really, is what I'm saying. And then there are shorter ones, like this one. And so all these ingredients are taken, pounded, mixed with either water or blood or bile or some other ingredient, and made into pills. Now, I didn't actually, I then became interested in, you know, is there anybody still making these pills? Well, there are herbalists living up in Shan State and some of the refugees coming over the border, immigrants, who actually still make pills. Obviously, they don't have the ingredients that they were using years ago, but they're still collecting herbs, which they do on the night of a full moon. It has to be a full moon, because that's when the herbs are at their strongest. And then she grinds them up, and those little green, that pink bowl has got these little pills in it. Okay, so she's still making. When I asked her what they were used for, she said, well, a lot of people coming over the border have HIV symptoms, TB, all kinds of diseases. They go to the hospital and they get medication through the hospital, or they go on trials because drug companies pay for them to trial. But I can give them other ingredients that help minor symptoms, like the cough caused by TB at night. You know, she could provide a herb. The skin eruptions that you get with HIV, she had an ointment that she gave. And I actually saw clients coming to see her to collect these things. So you're getting Western medicine, but you're still getting people who want to use herbs and local products. And it's that mix of the two, which I think is really interesting. Okay, now when I talked to the lady, I said, what kind of ingredients? She wouldn't tell me the ingredients, obviously, because it's a secret. I mean, all these recipes, until this got translated from the 1840 version, we had no idea what these are. But she said, I include water lily, parts of water lily, because it's pure. It's an ingredient which adds purity. She selected from plants with long stems, because that would make people upright. Okay, would give strength. She chose plants that have a good scent, because that would attract good spirits to help heal the person. And the herbal remedies she told me she learned from her family. So basically, it wasn't written down, she learned it. But unlike the manuscript, it was written down. And so what are the treatments? That's an overrun. I was told half an hour to get a move on. What are some of the treatments? Okay, so if you look in the book, food poisoning, 3 pills dissolved in the foam that forms as water spills over a rice field. Now, why water that spills over is it got some chemical in it that actually is beneficial? Is it some kind of superstition? No, I have no idea. I mean, the book hopefully will make people think about things like that. But I'm hoping that people will actually start thinking about why would you do that? You don't just do it because you want to go out and get some water, you do it for a specific reason. The same for the water from the runoff of the roof. A lot of the recipes had water taken from roof runoffs. Again, why would you do that? There has to be something, maybe a chemical or some kind of ingredient that they knew about that we don't know about. And then for wound infection, banana trunk sap seems to come into a lot of these recipes. They also use crude oil, kerosene, which I thought was quite interesting. And then for fevers, you take 3 pills and dissolve in lime water, or 3 pills with a root of wirewood. In other words, you've got the pills already made up, and then you add other things to them. What do they treat? Well, in the manuscript, there were over 20 treatments for digestive disorders. There were 5 treatments for heart conditions. There was 1 treatment for flu, only 1. But again here, you see, bone earth turned by a plant, deposit from a fish trap, cow dung plaster. All those ingredients. So why? I mean, it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Not to just dismiss them completely, but to really think why they possibly might contain ingredients. So, I mean, if you boil them, presumably you would make them free of germs. I know if I've missed this line. Oh, yes, I missed this slide. An unusual treatment. This is my favorite. I don't know if anybody knows, it probably didn't happen here, but in Britain, about probably 20 years ago, we had mad cow disease. And there was a big thing made about mad cow disease, and professors from Oxford University found a treatment and all the rest of it. And what's contained in that manuscript is a recipe for treating mad cow disease. Mad cow disease, according to this investigative journal, I got a lot into looking at clinical to try and find out what all this meant. The mad cow disease actually is a disease that can trace back to the 5th century BC. So it isn't a new disease. It was here, it was in Shan State. So that whole idea, I had to write to Oxford and tell them, you didn't invent it. By 5th century BC, they already had a mad cow disease, which I rather enjoyed, I must say that. I sent them a copy of the book. Conditions. If somebody doesn't respond to medical conditions, then you assume that it's bad spirits. And so then the manuscript contains recipes for dealing with spirits. So we've got one which I'll let you read. Again, interesting why you would scrape wood from these verses. Is it just because it's associated with a monastery and therefore it's got religious significance? Or is there some other reason why you would use it? And then the whole idea of waste cooking water, everything to do with evil spirits has to be polluted, right? It's polluted ingredient. What the manuscript doesn't say, sadly, is what you do with the recipe. I don't think you would drink that. I think you may rub it on the body, but I can't imagine that it's a prescription that you would take orally. But there's nothing in the manuscript that actually tells you. And then there are some other interesting things, like I had these drop contract killers. I love this one. One who sit on a worn mat with an old chip bowl. And then the weight of the powder that you use, the prescription that you make up, you have to weigh it according to the number of people that you want to get rid of. So what are the other factors in treatment? Well, first of all, astrology. Before you treat somebody, you have to establish their birth date. You know, you can't treat them until you know when they were born, what day they were born on. You know, all that has to be known. So any sire, even when this manuscript is written, would not have treated anybody until they'd gone through this questioning. And then numerology features in it. A certain number of herbs or a certain amount or whatever, according to a lucky number. 6 is a lucky number, so you might get 6 bits of an ingredient in a pot, or you might get 6 drops of water, or 6, you know, because 6 is lucky and so on, and there are other lucky numbers. Then it also refers to the number of times you repeat an incantation, also related to good luck. But it's quite a complicated, it isn't just the recipes themselves, it's all the other things that go along with the recipe. And then herbal remedies, as I said, they're administered with yan, with some kind of paper, piece of paper with a drawing on it. And kata, which is the incantation, the chanting. So you've got the recipe, the way it's made up, the way it's mixed, number of times you add the ingredients, the astrology and numerology added in. So it's not a simple, straightforward subject we're talking about. It's something quite complicated. And then mystical diagrams, I'll just go over these quickly. The yan are basically the little squares are they can be the first letter of a Pali incantation, so everyone will know. So it could be just Om, which means the whole incantation starting with Om, or it could be a series of letters and syllables that are in some form of shorthand or code for a magical spell, but only the Saya who makes the yan will know what it means. Right? It's not something that we could understand, except for some of the monks gave me clues about things like Om and various other letters that were lucky and so on. And then Saya, they speak in magic spells to contact the spirits. And the two, the yan and the kappa go together. And this is from the manuscript. There are a few pictures, illustrations in the manuscript. Not many. Most of them are diagrams, so yan. But this is Pilo, spirit, and the image at the bottom is of a candle, and the image of Pilo is copied on a yan and burnt inside a candle to get rid of evil spirits. Okay. I can't, the yan, I think I've translated it in the book, but I'm not sure, or it's in my magic, but I can't remember now what the syllables are. And then to exorcise evil spirits, you can use Pilo, the possibility, by copying his image on mulberry paper, rolling it with a cotton wick, inserting in a hollow candle, and then setting it on fire. And the smoke, carries the spirit away with all religions, with incense in Christianity and so on. The idea of smoke going up to heaven. So it's a kind of universal symbol of burning a candle. But in order to exorcise evil spirits, it's usually 1 or 3 candles are actually offered. And then this one is for protection. It's got the 4 cardinal direction. The 4 ribbons represent the cardinal direction. And it's a symbol that was copied onto wood or carved in wood, engraved in metal, and actually put inside city walls or areas where you want to protect. So it's slightly different from the others. It's not a herbal remedy. It's more to do with protection. So the 4 ribbon shapes represent the cardinal direction. It's copied on wood, metal, stone, and placed in the cardinal directions around a city or an area that you want to protect from evil spirit. And in the old days, they used it. If there was a disease epidemic or a famine, they tried to re-energize the symbol. And then the magic spells. My book's got a whole list of magic spells. I don't know what they mean. I mean, you can read them. They're translated into English, and they're some of the magic spells. I managed to get those translated by 2 elderly men up in Shan State, and Conway was an English speaker, and so he was able to translate it into English. This was all done in about 2010. But I was quite interested to know, I mean, I don't know what they mean, but I am sure that somebody will be able to translate. Sooner or later, somebody's going to pick up the book and say, oh, I know what those mean. You know, it'll be a new lesson. And then today, just to finish, today's ritual. Well, of course, there are less herbal remedies, the less herbalists practicing. Because, you know, we can all go into shops and buy pills, can't we? You know, you don't need to go and get something made up specially. Unless you've got a deep belief in the power of a herbalist, you just go in a shop and buy whatever you want. So that's changed. But the insecurity of migration to Thailand from Myanmar, monks up on the border, certainly when I was doing my research in 2010, 2011, 2012, were actually treating a lot of migrants who are suffering with a lot of issues, you know, fear, anxiety, you know, worries about families left at home, lack of security, no medical care, all those things. And I watched a lot of ceremonies which involved candles and yan and herbs. And these people would come in, queues of them all day. And the abbot would try to reassure them and actually give them candles and so on. And whether or not you believe in this as a way of treatment, there is no doubt that psychologically that hugely helped the people who were suffering. So, you know, even if you don't have any belief in the actual herbs or for the fact that it's kind of has a very good positive psychological effect. What they do, what the monks do in several of the monasteries, they've got so many people, customers coming through, so many people, that they can't produce the yan fast enough. And so they make modern sort of interpretations of yan, which they say will work. So in other words, they test them. And then the novices go to the copy shop, you know, the print shop, and make photocopies. So some of the monks have little piles of yan photocopied. And then when people go in to see them, they get the correct yan. But I think it's quite interesting, you know, how the modern adaptation from handwriting for every person that went to actually doing it this way. It's quite interesting. And so in conclusion, I'd say that obviously this manuscript, many like it, it's very important that they're conserved and digitized. And we do have a program, or we did until I had to leave, of conserving and digitizing Shan manuscripts at Shan State Buddhist University. I think it's an understanding of the culture of healing is very important, not just here, but all over the world. You know, what's the psychological importance? And then, of course, in terms of the conservation of the environment, what's contained in that manuscript are all those plants that now the forest is destroyed are no longer available. And also the animals, all those animals that they went and captures, the pangolins, the bears, the tigers, and so on, have all gone. And so what you have is a record of something in the 19th century, early 19th century, which you can compare with the terrible devastation of Shanlan now. On my last slide, I went to a monastery up beyond, near Chengtung, about a couple of hours' drive. And they'd actually got a monastery dedicated to the tiger, because the old men had not heard a tiger roar for 20 or 30 years, and they wanted to have some kind of image of the extinct animal. So that's my slide. I just think that's very interesting way. Obviously, local people really care about these things.
This is very fascinating and a lot of new information about both the tradition as well the manuscript as well as the herbs and the objective of using these herbs. When I was a master student, I did similar research in Indonesia actually on the use of traditional medicine, but not through manuscript. A lot was oral tradition. But there are similarities in the kind of herbal and the way it was used both for physical disease as well as for evils and black magic as well as spirit possession and all kind of. So it's very interesting to listen to this. But I will open the floor first for any comment, questions. Okay, please introduce yourself first, and then we are going to have the answer.
Hi, thank you so much for your work. It's so incredible to see the curiosity that you had to dive so deep into something so unseen and unfamiliar, I guess, to the Western world. My name is Kat, and I'm actually filming a documentary on spiritual wisdom in Thailand. So I'm so happy to be here. Yeah. My question is, I think you concluded it in the last slide, but why should we care? I know you care. I know I care. But younger generation kids, they don't know why this is important. That's one. The second question is, if you were to have all the budget in the world, all the grants in the world, how would you imagine this surviving the next decade if we have them?
I take any other question before going to, yes, please.
Thank you very much. That's really fascinating. My question, I'm not exactly sure how to form it, but you were working from manuscript, and you were also working with the Saya. Did you find it corresponded, or did the Saya have a different way of doing it than what you got in the manuscript? How much convergence and divergence in actual practice?
When I first started working here, I produced a book called Thai Textiles for British Museum. And when that book was published, everywhere I went, everybody I interviewed said, why do you care about all these old textiles? Why do you care about all these old textiles? Why do you care about all these old things? Now, you take today and look at the museums that have sprung up now. Look at Queen Sirikya with all the costumes and the kind of caring of them. And that's a fantastic museum where everything, conservation is a really, really important issue there. The woman who runs it is very highly trained in America and Europe. They brought back that caring knowledge. And I think textiles now have got the correct, I really appreciate it. And I think there is enough established organizations to protect them so that even if young people aren't interested, maybe the next generation will be. They're there, they're conserved, they're available, you can look at them. the way in London you can go and look, the way in Washington, D.C. And for a culture to be alive, it has to have that ability to protect its old custom. You know. And I think Thailand's done a good recently, it's done a very good job. There's a collection of amazing people in the Bank of Thailand in Thai. There's what, 2 being down here. And I think, and I'm just hoping that that happened over what, 30 years, that we can hope that manuscripts, somehow we can push them there, or I can write enough or talk enough to the authority to actually persuade them to give money. Because when we got the Bank of Thailand collection, the person who owned it was going to sell it to Australia. And I remember going to the authorities and saying, you can't let that collection leave this country. That's the only collection about Lama textiles, right? You have to save it. And everybody was running around, you know, trying to decide what to do. And in the end, the bank stepped in and paid. So you can do it, you know. And I think the Shan Buddhist University is digitizing its manuscript. Is it happening here? Is there any digitization of manuscripts?
Well, I think maybe later on, after you finish to answer, I will give the floor to Patrick, also because we have...
No, I'm just going to quickly...
No, you are going to...
If I had all the money in the world, I would pay for a very expensive digitizing manuscript library. I would hire at least 10 academics, and I would make them give lectures and train the next generation. And to your question, yeah, I think Rosalia, that manuscript is so old, it wouldn't exist in the villages because it wouldn't have been looked after properly. But I think there were Sciortino with their own manuscripts. Probably they could have been as old, but nobody knew how old they were. And there were things in those manuscripts which tied up with, like Pilo, you know, the spirit. In the manuscripts there were copies of Pilo. And there were references to a few herbs, but not to the extent of that manuscript. Oh yeah, with the candle switched on its side. Well, I think it's a representation to indicate that's what you do with the image. You know, you light it in the candle. Yeah, probably. I have no idea, but the monk said it was a candle. Yes.
Yeah, no, I wanted to add that actually Junction has been hosting a project led by Patrick McCormick there to digitalize Mon manuscript all over Thailand. And now the collection is actually online, so probably he's going to talk about this in November, but this is a small anticipation of that. So please, can you tell where are these manuscripts so people can find them?
Well, I don't want to steal Susan's thunder, but I do want to say that Francois Tanturier, who is at the Inya Institute in Rangoon, has applied for and received funding from that MAEP, Modern Endangered Archive Project Program, at UCLA, and he is digitizing, and digitizing just means you're taking digital photographs. People think it means something more special than that. Of Shan language manuscripts, some are in Burma, but some are here, kept here in Thailand. So that is an ongoing project. Also, the EFEO up in Chiang Mai has digitized some of the manuscripts. Those are more Lana, but I'm not sure if some of the Shan language manuscripts have been digitized too. I would encourage anybody who's interested in this kind of work. You don't necessarily have to be an academic, and you don't have to be a foreigner. There are funding opportunities available for material before the 20th century. That would be the EAP through the British Library, and material that is from the 20th century is the MEAP, and that's through UCLA. Just very briefly, my own work was with Mon language manuscripts kept here mostly in and around Bangkok, so central Thailand. We did 4 monasteries I have permission to digitize manuscripts at 15 more. So there's a lot of work to be done. You want anything else? So these are, they're from what you call the Tai Mon community. These are people who spoke the Mon language, or part of the Mon ethnic group, we would call them today, who arrived over the past several centuries, most recently in the early 19th century. So these people are full Thai citizens, and they are largely assimilated to being Thai. So these are not recent migrants from Burma. And their monasteries have been here for at least a century and a half, sometimes much longer.
Okay, so we go back to the Shan, but I want to say these are online. I mean, this is the second phase of this project, and they are online and can be seen. And there will be a follow-up phase. And indeed, the funder is this the library that he mentioned. So.
Wonderful if we could have more knowledge about what they actually said. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say first, it's so refreshing to see something different from Myanmar for those of us ensconced in the conflict that's going on, and to remember how rich the tapestry of the culture is there, and it's really wonderful to see that. I was also thinking it's funny, some of the things you posted there. I could imagine some of the revolutionary forces seizing on that for recipes that they could use. My question was, you had the image of there was one woman that you had in the slide who was an herbalist. Did you find in your work that any of those types of specialists had somebody that they were mentoring from the younger generation? And is there any movement informally that you knew, that you observed in Shan State to pass that knowledge to younger generations? Or did you find that it was something that's just seen as being of the past?
I do know about this thing.
I mean, just generally, is there any?
They get all gone. One of my children. I said, you're not going to sell to buy this.
So, any other question or comment related to the manuscript? You want to ask anything? Since you also have a lot of tattoos. Okay, please.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hi, thanks for that talk. That was really very interesting. I just had a question about the manuscripts, and I think it was the diagram that you've actually got on the front of the book. And there's a little square with,
Yeah.
yes, that's the word, yeah. What is that, and why are there so many, and what does it mean?
Oh, the yarn between his legs.
Yeah.
Now, I actually can't remember. I know that's awful of me because I gave the book over to be published, but I think I've got it in my magic book. Have you seen my book called Thai Magic? It's translated in that. Now, that book's out of print, but I'm going up to Chiang Mai and we're reprinting it. That will be available. It's called Thai, T-A-I Magic. And I know it's translated and I can't remember the letters. I'm terribly sorry.
That's putting you on the spot.
The publisher chose the cover. And then I thought, when I get back to England, I'm going to have to look up and see what it means because I can't remember. But usually they're the first letter of an incantation, like I said, like perhaps Om, which means, the whole Buddhist Om Mani, or it's the a beginning letter of a magic spell, or it's a lucky number, or it's some kind of astrological symbol. basically.
Any other? Yes, please.
These roots medicine, they're naturally like by themselves, they are poisonous. And how do Thai herbalism normalize the toxin? Is that by is that a spell? Is that a yantra? Oh, I mean like hatha? Or is it by heat? Or do you, what, what's your comment on that?
When you had your tattoos done, did the Satyan say an incantation over the tattoo?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's the same with the medication. So the medication and an incantation or a magic spell over the medicine as you give it to the person. And then you give them instructions what they have to chant when they take it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. So lots of incantation. Or magic spell. Could be Buddhist, could be spirit magic spell. And the two, again, a very interesting subject. To what extent do Buddhism and spirit religion cross over in this particular, study? And I can't really give you an answer, but it definitely is a mix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other last question from anyone? Not, I think we are going to thank Susan for this very interesting presentation. And we have coffee and tea and some snacks, so please do continue the talk. And of course, there are books that you can, yeah, and she can sign it after you buy, of course, and then, and then you can, the most important, you can continue the conversation more in detail with Susan. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's pouring rain, very hard. She came all wet. It's very bad rain, and there is also a typhoon or is going on. So thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you.